apologize for my tardiness. I got one of those calls where I couldn't just say, hey, bye. Anyway. Well, yeah, the donuts are going to be late. No, I'd like to open the meeting for the special meeting of the Operations Committee for MMWD. I need a motion to call to order. Okay, do we need to do roll call or?
No.
We're just-
Director Russell is just listening in.
Okay, so Director Russell is on the phone. And do we have any other directors in the room? Nope. Okay, so we'll adopt the agenda. Now I'll ask for public expression. Is there anyone who would like to comment on something that is not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to, we need approval of the minutes of the Operations Committee.
Move to approve the minutes of, what is it, November 15th?
And I agree with you, so.
Yeah. Okay, I do have a question, however. I'm not sure I was, I'm sure I was present in the room, but I'm not sure I was on the board. Can I still vote on these minutes? Should I abstain? What should I do?
I think you should abstain and Director Quintero can approve them.
Okay.
I can make the motion though, right, or can I?
You can make a motion.
Okay, I'll move approval of the minutes.
Well, and I agree with you, I was there. Yeah, thanks.
But I'm abstaining.
Yes, understood. Thank you very much. Okay, so for the first item, we're going to look at the First Amendment to the District Lease Number 61 with Sprint Spectrum Realty Company. Good morning, Stanley.
Good morning. How are you?
Great. Welcome.
Good. This is the First Amendment to the District Lease 61, Sprint Realty, Sprint Spectrum Realty Company. I'm just going to sort of summarize what's going on. Sprint leases about 500 square feet of space from our Lucas Valley Tank site for a communication facility. The rent originally started in 2012. The actual rent, base rent was $48,100 in 2012. Currently, it is $60,432.19 based upon annual CPI adjustments. Sprint has received permit approval to do some modifications to the site. They're going to add 2 antennas. They're going to increase the number of, or modify the cabinets to allow for additional frequencies. The lease area is going to remain the same. The lease agreement gives the district the opportunity to modify the rent whenever there are upgrades or changes in their equipment or their frequencies. So we negotiated an annual rent increase of $6,000, which is going to be prorated in the first year, and we also negotiated a $9,100 oversight and administrative fee. The oversight fee will take effect once the amendment has been fully executed. The rent increase will become effective 1 week prior to the commencement of their construction. So we're asking that the committee refer this to the board for approval. Are there any questions?
How often is this renegotiated, the lease?
Typically every 5 years.
So 10% increase is pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you for your work.
Sure, thank you.
I assume, if you know, does this expand service for the public out there?
I believe it will. Both T-Mobile and Sprint are in the process of trying to merge, but the merger has not been finalized. There are, I believe, 14 attorneys general throughout the country who are sort of blocking this. Mm-hmm. But once they get over that hurdle, then they probably will approve the complete merger. Mm-hmm. So it should provide better coverage for everyone in that particular area.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that goes to my question is not just improving the service area, will it expand the number of people that are able to get service? Is what
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
Okay.
I have to ask, is there any public comment on this item? Seeing none,
Motion to send this to the board?
Absolutely agree. Thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
continued good work.
All right.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is contract number 1917 for the repair and replacement of the San Geronimo Treatment Plant Septic System's deep intermittent sand filter. Jake, good morning.
Good morning. The repair and replacement of the San Geronimo Treatment Plant septic system's deep intermittent sand filter is mandated work by the County Environmental Health Services due to slow drainage. The engineer's estimate for this work is $100,000, and this district staff has opened bids on December 17th, and we're currently reviewing all bid documents. If they're acceptable, staff will make recommendation for the contract award at the January 7th board meeting. Staff recommends referral of this item to the board with recommendation to proceed.
Move approve?
I agree. We're putting it to the board for approval.
Sounds great.
Thank you very much. That was easy.
Yeah.
Okay, now for the tough one. No. Ross Reservoir landslide repair project. Is Mike, who's presenting on this? Is Mike Ban?
Let me go find out.
The Phantom Mike. I said ban, it's Bon. I say ban. Yeah.
Okay, we're going old school.
What'd they do, wake you up, Mike?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, I only have three.
Okay, that's all right. Oh, the slide isn't working.
No, technology's not cooperating this morning.
Yeah, really.
Okay. So,
Mike will, I presume, post the presentation online for the public?
yes. So it's my pleasure to present to you the Ross Reservoir Landslide Repair Project. This is one of the most important projects that we're working on here at the district right now. And part of the reason we wanted to highlight the project to you today is in order for us to get this work done by the start of the rainy season next week or next year, we're going to proceed under CEQA as an emergency project. So we'll be bringing that to you in January. So this first slide is an aerial shot of Ross Reservoir. Ross Reservoir is a tiny dot in the middle of your slide there. It's a 1 million gallon concrete storage tank that was constructed in 1927, and about 20% of all water at the district flows through Ross Reservoir. On the bottom, you can see the orientation, how it sits near Phoenix Lake. And then slightly to the right off of Dibble Road is Ross Creek. So that just sort of orients you to where the Ross Reservoir is in the Ross Valley. So if you turn to the next slide, that is kind of a close-up of Ross Reservoir. Monique, can you make more copies, please?
Yeah, I don't know if this is in order, but I'll look on your screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
I sent 9 copies or extra copies to that copier over there. Yeah. So the next slide, it's a little bit close-up view of Ross Reservoir in the middle. That road going up to Ross Reservoir is called Warren Springs Road. And then the slide area is
To the right.
The right. You can see the bare area where there aren't any trees.
Yeah.
So that's the area of concern. So turning to the next page, this is the next page, Jack, there.
Yeah.
So that's an aerial shot of Ross Reservoir. Warren Springs Road is shown there up on the left, and then you can't see the slide on this one, but it's on the back side of the tank. The next shot shows you a really good view of the slide. So this was taken in 2017, in June of 2017, and so you can see the slide area in front of Ross Reservoir. We had tarped the area to protect the slide from encroaching further. And the concern is the proximity of the slide to the corner of Ross Reservoir. So following the the following rains in 2017, we discovered a leak in Ross Reservoir. And also, we discovered, or we were alerted that there was turbid water showing up in Ross Creek downstream. The Friends of Corte Madera Creek had alerted us to that. And so we discovered that there's a 12-inch discharge pipe coming out of Ross Reservoir, that pipe was leaking. And so to alleviate these occurrences, we lowered the operating level in Ross Reservoir, and that stopped the leak in Ross Reservoir. And we also shut off the 12-inch discharge pipe, and the turbid water stopped showing up in Ross Creek. Now we could do that because prior to this project, we had installed a new pipeline in Lagunitas Road, and so we could backfeed that area that was being supplied by this 12-inch line with the new pipeline. So we knew we had to do something. We had to repair the landslide. The first order of business was to replace the bypass pipeline. So if you turn to the next slide, that is an aerial of the bypass pipeline project. You can see Ross Reservoir in the middle of that slide. Water flowing into the Ross Reservoir comes from the left, and then it discharges those series of pipes on the right. You can see a small pipe that connects those two. That was a 12-inch diameter bypass that was installed in 1971, and it's too small. It can't give us the amount of flow that we need to bypass the tank. And the reason we want to be able to bypass it is because if something happens to Ross, we need to take it out of service. We still want to be able to supply water to the Ross Valley. So our first order of business was to replace that bypass pipeline, and that's the pipeline that's shown at the bottom, the welded steel pipe there. And that project, the board awarded that construction project in June. The contractor is out there finishing up that work, and we anticipate that pipe will be in by next month, early next month. So that's the first order of business. The next slide kind of shows you everything that we're doing out to support repair of the landslide. You can see at the bottom is the bypass pipeline, the dashed pipe. That's what's going in right now. The next project, of course, is the landslide repair itself, and that's shown kind of that baseball glove outline. That's where the landslide repair is going to take place. Now, that project includes the placement of about 13,000 yards of material, so half of which will come on site, the other half we'll have to bring on site. So quite a bit of fill. We're also going to be installing under drains, and we're going to be improving the roads going up to the Ross Reservoir. So quite a big project. Looking at that footprint for the repair, you can see that there's quite a few trees in that area. So those trees have to come out before we can begin this work, and that needs to happen in January before the nesting season starts. So that gets into the emergency here. Also, the discharge pipes coming out of Ross Reservoir are shown by the green lines. They actually encroach the area of the landslide repair. So we're going to be, as part of that project, installing a new pipeline, which is shown by the blue and white dash. So that's a new pipeline for discharge out of Ross Reservoir outside the area of the landslide repair. The tie-ins, though, we have to do those during the period of low flow, so that's going to happen in January as well. So the notes here are saying tie-in number 1 done by MMWD crews. We're going to be doing that as soon as the contractor's finished with the bypass pipeline, and then tie-in number 2 on the other side. So we actually finished preliminary design on the landslide repair last spring, and when we did that, we were now able to bring on board an environmental firm to do the documentation and look at what's needed for this project. So we went out for an RFP this summer, and we hired Panorama Environmental to do the environmental work. And in August, they went out there and they started doing their biological surveys, and what they discovered was there was actually quite a bit of moisture in the landslide itself, and discovered that there's actually a natural spring in the landslide. So that was concerning. They became concerned that the hydrostatic pressure from this spring was going to place additional pressure on the landslide. So that elevated the urgency of this project. We also started engaging the regulatory agencies. We brought the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers out there. We brought Regional Water Quality Control Board, Fish and Wildlife. We actually have been coordinating with the Friends of Corte Madera Creek as well. Those agencies, in consultation with our environmental consultant, recommend that in order to get this work done before the rains come next year, that we need to do this as an emergency repair under CEQA. So when we come back to the board in January, we'll be making that recommendation. So next slide, I just wanted to show you one more picture of the landslide. This was taken in December. You can see the landslide on the right, the reservoir itself there on the left. The landslide's about 10 feet away from the reservoir. We are going to survey the landslide, so we'll be able to monitor it this winter to see if there's any additional movement, but we've protected it and things look good at this point. So we'll keep an eye on that. The last slide I wanted to show you was just a reiteration of our schedule. So in January, we'll be completing the Ross Reservoir Bypass Pipeline Replacement Project. We'll also be coming back to the board with a recommendation about how to proceed with the project. We'll be constructing the tie-ins to the discharge pipe. We'll be removing the trees that encroach the landslide area. We're finishing up design of the repair itself, so we'll go out to bid in March. We'll award that project in April and then begin in May. And it's going to take about 7 months to finish this project, but we'll get it done in time in November before the next rainy season comes. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have Alex and I are our project engineer on this job, so he's done an awesome job managing all of the different parts here, so he can answer any questions you may have as well.
Go ahead.
This appears to be beyond a temporary fix. Is this the long-term fix?
Yes.
And then second, what's the future of Ross Valley Reservoir? I mean, as I recall, it has we have a plan to go beyond that and put something else
Yes,
to satisfy that need.
yeah, the eventual plan is to replace it with a much larger tank, somewhere on the order of 4 million gallons, but we're going to be evaluating the need and the size of that tank.
So as far as the landslide itself, then this is the permanent fix?
Yes, this will stay in place regardless of what we do up at Ross.
Just a bit more specificity. We're taking a bit of a step back and going to be doing a planning effort on our entire transmission and distribution system, something we haven't done for quite some time, that will allow us with a level of clarity to zero in exactly on the sizing of Ross reservoirs and also understanding, do we need another tank at the higher elevation there, and bring that detailed modeling and associated analysis to the board. So you will be seeing some efforts going forward with an RFQ and RFP process to bring in support for that pretty significant effort, but important one for the
Right.
district.
And just along that same line there, is there any connection system-wide with Pine Mountain Tunnel and the problems we're associated, is the fix?
Yeah,
really
so
associated?
yes, Director Gibson, that was my, when I was touching on understanding the need for storage at the higher elevation, that would be a replacement potentially for Pine Mountain Tunnel in some fashion.
Okay, good.
Just a couple things. One of them is, I mean, slide activity was, according to the, the presentation, it was first noted in 1960s.
Yeah,
So
it's
this
been there
is
a while.
60 years, 60 years of movement up there. And, being pretty familiar with the landscape of, the Bay Area, there's huge slumps and slides everywhere. It's the nature of where we live. So I'm very relieved to know that you're talking about a 4 million gallon tank to replace this. But I also, and so you're also talking about understanding where the siting would be, what the siting would be for that would be
Yeah,
best.
yeah.
Yeah, and of course I'm, like everybody, I'm sure, really concerned about this sort of circumstance and the additional impact of something like an earthquake could really just eliminate this as a supply, and it's a critical one. And I'm sort of sorry to know that we have to go this route before we get a tank, but it is what we have to do.
Yeah.
And so, I might recommend that we put this on the agenda for the board meeting, because I think this is one of those topics that ties into both Pine Mountain, you know, and
Isn't that
Yes,
actually
we'll be
what's called
bringing
for?
it
Yeah.
to the January 21st board meeting. We'll be coming back.
Yeah.
with Pine Mountain.
Not Pine Mountain, just
Oh,
this,
oh,
just
Yeah,
this.
so no, it'll be great, because I think this
To
needs to
tie
be,
it, to bring it in with Pine Mountain, you're saying?
or just a connection to that in your presentation, just
Yeah.
because I think we've talked about that in the
Right,
past.
right.
And I also think this merits public awareness, you know, and it's important work. And,
If I could, what staff is anticipating in terms of this effort and the linkage to storage at a higher elevation, Pine Mountain Tunnel and the like, is this effort is really focused in two parts. The bypass, of course, so we have redundancy and resiliency that we haven't had, that will prepare us both for the eventual replacement of this tank that we know we need to do, as well as be prepared in the event something were to happen in the interim with the slide. So we'll be in a much better position going forward with that bypass. And then, of course, a project to address the slide materially. Separately, but certainly as important, is the effort going forward with the system modeling and planning in terms of where we should be in the future, in terms of our transmission distribution system and storage system throughout our system, but with a focus on Ross Valley. So that is somewhat de-linked from addressing this issue in its immediacy.
Right.
But that is an effort going forward that we'll be bringing to the board as we go out to bring on consultant support for that effort.
yeah, and I wasn't asking that we connect this to a Pine Mountain presentation, but just making that understand where we are. You know, one thing that's not in here is an estimated price. Is there?
Project, we think is going to be about 1.5 to
Okay.
2 million. Yeah.
All right. Great.
Just as an afterthought, on the replacement of the tank, while I acknowledge it is not quite a movie theater marquee, it does, as a facility, have some historical value. And whatever we do, and I'm not trying to change the water system, but we should consider that fact and work that into the thinking somehow, you know, so, yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
Yes,
Ref-
okay,
refer-
motion to refer to the board?
okay, along with it, and having an agendized item so we can
Yeah.
discuss it. That's actually the last item on the agenda. Thanks, everybody. And you know what? Everybody have a great holiday.
Happy holiday, everybody.
Thanks so much for all your work,
Yeah.
all of you.